So
I
you make business uncomplicated, right?
I make business uncomplicated. So everything I do is easy, simple. The few things that make all the difference. And I'll tell you that one of my mentors taught me over at Benjamin Franklin, taught me that the simpler you make it, the further you can take it. And that applies to everything, from how you pay to how you wash the trucks, to every system. Just keep it pared down. Fight fancy. So people start to write a manual. They've never written a manual. They've never written down what to tell these guys to do. And then they take 3 months writing a manual for washing the truck.
Right. Yep. I've seen that a lot. I have. Honestly.
Right. And the perfectionism, the technician in them, all the weird things that whatever our different personalities are, we just tend to make it too complicated. And if you can, as the leader, get really, really clear on what the vision and the mission is, and then engage your team in projects that will help you get there. The end result of most projects is a procedure. Make sure that procedure is really simple.
I think there's like an unspoken pressure. There's like this psychological pressure on people to make some really complex process so that they look really smart, like they're a high-level executive or something. And these little guys, they feel like they have to have these bullet-pointed 10-page things. But the real genius is in the simplicity of it, right?
Yes. In fact, there are some companies who, as they get bigger, become boutique and fancy and virtually unsellable because they're not scalable anymore. Mm-hmm. There's so many reports and systems and scorecards and procedures, and they keep going to the meeting every year to show off what nuanced statistic they discovered, like going to Antarctica or something. None of that matters. And there's pressure on the groups. There's pressure on Howard and Nexstar and SGI to always trot out the next thing.
Yeah. Well, this is good. Well, let's get started because we're going to waste all of our awesome stuff right now.
Our awesomeness. We don't want to waste our awesomeness.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just going to verify we're recording. We are good. We're good. Okay, I'm going to do my cheesy podcast intro and introduce you.
Yay! Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Quick Talk Podcast. Josh here. How the heck are you? I am talking to hopefully who will become a really cool friend of mine, Ellen, because she's so much fun. You're going to learn all about that in a minute. Ellen helps small business. She has been in small business. She describes herself on her website as a plumber's wife, and I think that's at the beginning of her story. But what she does is she helps people make business uncomplicated. She helps people make super stupid simple business plans and kind of demystify the process and all that goes along with having a small business. Ellen, how the heck are you?
Woo! We are totally BFFs from this point forward.
Does that mean best friends in the future?
Best friends forever.
Oh, perfect. I'm already in. That's awesome. So
yeah, I think you're so fun, and I like your big smile, and thank you for having me on the show. I like your philosophy. I know we're going to be fast friends. So this is fun.
Yeah.
And we have a mutual friend in Howard Partridge. We were just bragging on you, Howard. Love, love, love.
Yep. Lots of warm and fuzzy purple unicorns floating around for Howard. I look up to Howard. He's a man of integrity. He's a good business guy. And hey, if business isn't fun, I don't want anything to do with it, to be honest with you. You got to have fun. And look, I have bad days. I get down in the dumps and stressed out and, angry sometimes. But if that's your general kind of trend, then that's not fun, right? How do we make business fun? Is it decomplicating our business?
Well, it's interesting that you say fun. You obviously are a fun person, as am I. However, everybody is different. And that brings us to today's topic, which is about how we pay people, which is one slice of the business pie. But for some people, fun is really important. For other people, results are really important. For others, relationships are everything. For others, it's about processes and consistency and standards. So understanding that people are different helps a lot when it comes to creating a business that works for you and the people who work with you.
Well, that's a good point. That's a fair point. So you don't have to have fun. If you're one of these results-oriented spreadsheet guys, and that's okay too. You can still have a successful business too. But let's move right into the macro topic, and then we'll talk about your background and all that, because I want to go into that. But what we're going to talk about, actually, we should go into your background first, obviously.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about how to pay people.
Why is she here?
Right. But who are you? Why should people listen to you? How many bajillions of dollars have you generated? Why are you so great, Ellen?
Well, my friend Mike Montano, who is a review buzz, I don't know if you've had him on, but he's awesome. He says that when you do a presentation, remember to share the why, the what, and the how. Perfect. So why I do what I do is to help people expand freedom, peace, prosperity, and freedom across the planet. That's my mission. That's my why, my purpose. And it all comes from me discovering that when you, write this down, charge more than it costs, you manufacture your own money. Now, I first discovered it when I was like 6 years old, selling penny candy in front of my house for 2 pennies, thinking, this is awesome. And then later on with business school, and I love school, I love higher education. I get where I went south with it, but with business school, with other business owners, with books you read, I fell into some of the myths that really strangled me as the plumber's wife. When I jumped into the family business to help, and I'm using air bunnies here, to help my husband in his business, I was deeply humbled because we didn't make any money. We didn't have any fun because I bought into some of the myths that maybe you're buying into, which is that you have to charge what the market will bear, that there's this thing called the going rate, that there are constraints as to what you can charge, and you're somehow supposed to make stone soup out of that going rate selling price. Mm-hmm. So as the plumber's wife, as my husband, his name is Hot Rod Josh. That's why I married him.
Hot Rod Josh?
No, Hot Rod, comma Josh.
Okay. Gotcha.
I said, what's your name, baby? And he said, Hot Rod. So I married him.
Oh, that's awesome.
But he's a plumber and a great guy. And I started to fall in love with tradespeople as a result of understanding how he thinks and how capable and wonderful he is. So I became a very stereotypical plumber's wife in that I was in charge of the books and the accounting and the admin, and he was going to go turn wrenches and we were going to get rich. But that didn't happen. What we did is we went into debt and deeper and deeper. And then one of my mentors, I'm a big fan of mentorship. That's what your podcast is all about, right? Helping a brother out, helping a sister out.
Yep. What? Yep.
What? Yeah, exactly.
Well,
right.
Wait. Let me interject. I think not only that, I'll take it a step further. I think we should all have a mentor, and even if you're at a low level of business, even if you're starting out, you should seek out other people to mentor. I think it's like totally goes both ways, because one of the best ways to learn is to give of yourself and to help someone else. So anyway, continue.
So good. Yeah. And so this is what happened to me is I read an article by Frank Blau. Do you know Frank Blau?
No, but he's got a really fancy pants last name.
Blau,
mm-hmm.
Polish fella,
mm-hmm.
Absolutely pain in my you-know-what. And the voice of reason, who's the one who told me, listen, it doesn't matter what other people charge. How much do you need to charge? You got to crunch your numbers, figure out your asset from your elbow, learn to read a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And Josh, as a fun person, I had no interest in that. Another one of the myths that I bought into was, if I do what I love, the money will follow. Yeah. Why would I have to do accounting, for crying out loud? Why would I have to figure out the money? Are you kidding? So I fought it. Then I learned it. And then I became like born again about business.
Well, Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth, which is like the most famous book ever. He talks about the idea of a baker thinking he's totally going to crush it when he opens a bakery. And,
Mm-hmm.
and running a bakery, the back end of a business, the finance, the employee issues, the interpersonal relationships and conflicts and all this stuff and the cash flow. And a baker who's an artisan who's super good at baking stuff. He's passionate about the bread and the whatever. Those are totally different things. Is that basically what happened to you?
Well, that book is the one I've probably recommended more than any other book. And I've seen Michael Gerber speak in small group, big group, many times. And if you were to take away from this conversation to go out and get that audio book, the E-Myth, the E-Myth Contractor, the E-Myth Revisited, he's got a bunch of versions of the same basic message. So pick one. And it changed my life, absolutely. So I think having that shared philosophy, Josh, is one of the reasons why we're going to be BFFs. So yeah, for sure, because it really, business is a whole new set of skills. And what you bring to the party, if you're a technician and this is resonating with you, I hate the business part of it, your skill set as a technician can help you learn what you need to learn as a business owner if you're willing to drop the baggage about it.
Well, I think it's important, too, when people feel beat down and stressed out like you're talking about. You said a minute ago why, what, and how you have to have a why. I feel like a lot of these guys are so numb to their own stress, their own daily survival, that they forget what they're trying to do, why it matters, what the final destination is. And if you can keep your eyes on that, it can kind of refire up the dream machine a little bit, not to be too cheesy, but it can help you have the motivation to focus on these other parts of the business, right?
Exactamundo. So for me, my journey was that the first thing I did was figure out the money. This is not the only way to become a good business person, but this is how I did it, and this is how I counsel people. Just because it worked for me, it's not the only way. But the first thing that I recommend my clients do, or if you call me up and you say, what should I do first? Make sure the money is cleaned up. That means operating at a known financial position, balance sheet and profit and loss. You understand them. They're current. You can run them once a week. There's no weird words. All the balances are right. If it's wrong, you can fix it. Getting your, mastery over your financials, no bad thing happens from that. And the very good news is it's not as hard as you may think it is. If I can do it, anybody can. Totally dyslexic and shiny object and creative and had no interest in it. But I was dying. Our business was killing us. I had to do something, and that's where my mentor suggested I start. And once I did, then I knew what the situation is. And this, brings us to what, why, and how. So then what I was faced with was not what I wanted to live. So I started to ask the bigger questions. What do I want? How can I serve? I turned to my husband, the plumber, and I say, what do you want? Why are we doing this? And he says to me, I like to work all by myself. I don't want to do this anymore. And now it's funny. So pretty much I was getting fired, and I understand. At the time it was traumatic and devastating. But I bring this up because it's important to understand what your why is. And what I had been doing, gulp, was trying to get my husband to change, to be more like what I wanted. I was getting excited about growing a bigger company. We'd gotten out of debt. We started to stockpile some money. This was fun. I add up how much we could do. We have 4 trucks. What if we had 8 trucks, 10 trucks? I get really excited about that. But that was me. And so one of the encouragements when I have an audience like this, Josh, thank you very much, is to remind people that they get to ask and answer the question for themselves. What do I want? And sometimes it's aligned with the family business or with your brother or your dad or your husband or your wife or your partner, whatever. And sometimes it's not. And it's totally okay. In fact, I would suggest required that you figure out for yourself what your why is, what do you want to do, why do you want to do it, and then the dreaded hows can be accomplished. You can figure out how. There's dozens of ways how to do whatever you want to do.
People start with how. They get stuck on how. They only focus on the how, and it drives me crazy because I do, business consulting, coaching. I have a little boot camp and stuff. I work with people, and they get totally obsessed with how am I going to achieve it, and rather than why do I even want to achieve it, And I visualize it like a mountain, and you should be focusing most of your effort focusing on the mountain. Is that the right mountain? Am I pointed in the right direction? Do I really want that so bad my stomach hurts? Is that the thing that gets pulls my butt out of bed in the morning? But instead, they're staring straight down at their feet at the weeds and saying, well, there's a weed and there's a river, and how am I going to get over that log over there? And I don't know. Mm-hmm. That stuff works itself out if you're really clear on where you're going and why you're going there. Do you agree?
I share your philosophy. You are speaking truth as I see it. And so in our business, what was the process then was the first thing we did was stop the bleeding and figure out the situation, the money. The money is important. Like it is. Don't fight it. Don't think it's just going to take care of itself. It's like having a dog. There are certain responsibilities about having money. And assume them. It's your money. It's your business. No one's going to do this for you. Your bookkeeper's not. Your CPA's not. They can help you, but ultimately the responsibility is yours. And my encouragement is it's not that hard. So once you get the money figured out, the basic scorecard, and we're going to get to a better way to pay. I promise. This is all leapfrogging along. But
we're rolling. This is good.
The second piece of it for me was the scorecard first and then the why, the purpose. And that's really the beginning of a business plan. I define a business plan as anything that helps you clarify what's on the top of the mountain and then moves you to some aligned action. So vision and action. It could be a vision board. It could be a 3x5 card that has the 3 things you're going to do today that are aligned with the top of the mountain for you. It takes clarity to simplify and then amplify your business. So the more clarity you have, this is so good, the less action you have to take, because we're not spinning our wheels. We're not going in a million directions. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. It just, when I start to get really busy, what I know is I'm doing stuff that isn't aligned. I have to look at the calendar. I have to look at my day and just decide what could I do that's going to lead me to the bigger picture. Pause a minute and look at the top of the mountain. I always point to the corner of the room. I like the mountain analogy. I always point to the corner of the room as like, this is where we're going, right? And there are lots of paths that we could get there. But what does that look at like? What's the grand mission? Let's remind ourselves.
Well, people get very confused on the difference between working really hard and having a high output of effort, like exhausting yourself. They confuse that as being the same thing as being productive. And they're not the same thing, right?
Right.
And if you can get clear, I love that you're talking about clarity, because that is everything. Getting clear, demystifying, desimplifying, breaking it down into really stupidly simple action steps. But here's the thing. Here's one of the things I noticed too. And this isn't a blanket statement, but I notice a trend. Okay. I see that people, they kind of poo-poo this stuff. They think it's like warm, fuzzy fluff words, a bunch of sound bites. They say, well, yeah, get a vision board, Ellen, really, come on. And they don't think it will work for them. But the thing is that they haven't done it. They haven't done it for themselves. And when you do it, it can change everything for you. It changed everything for me when I got clear. And really, it's all about doing one singular thing at a time, sequentially. I'm reading a book by Gary Keller. He says success.
I was just going to say the one thing by Gary Keller.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that book, one of the quotes, I'm only like a few pages in, is success doesn't happen simultaneously. It happens sequentially. And how are you going to get your list of action item 1, 2, 3 through 100 if you don't get clear and actually sit down and write the stuff out? You have to put in the time to actually put it on paper, right?
Yes. And, when it comes to like motivation, you can't motivate anybody. You can only identify your motivations. And perhaps, and this will get to our topic at hand today, a better way to pay is all about now than expanding this vision and the game to the team. But for starters, if it's your company, spend a little time in the desert, right? You have to think about what it is you want. You have to shut up in your head long enough to be inspired. Yeah. Right? This idea of like, what is it that I want? I remember asking Mark Victor Hansen, the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, I'm kind of lost. I don't know my purpose. I was working with my husband. He doesn't want me to work with him anymore. Now it's me, and I don't know what I want to do, and blah, 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 blah. And he said to me, oh, well, until you know your purpose is to find it. And I found that so overwhelm reducing. Okay, that's all right. It's okay if you don't know for a minute. What if you just shut up long enough to get inspired? That's meditation or prayer, whatever you want to do. Just be still. Or write down things that look good, or notice something else that someone has and go, I love that. That looks fantastic. And then you start to clarify, could your business get you there? Now there's pieces of your business that are on top of the mountain, but there's also the business is the path you're going to take, the car you're going to drive. That's even better because it's a vehicle. The vehicle you're going to take to move you from where you are to where you want to be. And once the business ceases to do that, it's time to fix it or abandon it or sell it or get another one, right? Those are the choices that we have as far as the business goes. But the really, really, really cool thing is as you engage the philosophy and the tactics that Josh and I are expressing, right? Nail down the numbers, and then put a little plan together. I call it unbusiness planning because I want to start making it a little more approachable. People think of business planning like dieting, budgeting. Oh, that's a horrible word. Everybody responds to these words. I know. I don't know better words to use for them. I kind of encourage you to just get over yourself on it. Just those are the words. Business planning is anything where you're clarifying your intention and then lining up a few steps. Maybe one at a time, maybe 2 or 3. I think there can, I get the one thing concept, get one thing done every day or the main thing done. But business is a bit of a juggling act. There's a phone and there's a guy and there's a this, you do have to choose, but make sure that those actions are aligned with your vision. Where it gets really delicious for some people. Now, like my husband, Hot Rod, likes working all by himself. If that's you, embrace it. You can be lucrative. He charged, in his business when he started one afterwards. And now he's on doing some other adventure as a solar guru working for an Italian company. I mean, life is long. You can have a lot of different things in your life. For the most part, life is long enough for you to do things sequentially, Josh. Right? Mm-hmm. But he went into business for himself for about 10 years and crushed it. Charged a ton of money, did exclusive work for an exclusive clientele, and rocked it.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's the whole point. We go into business is to be in control of that. A lot of people don't take enough time to even decide if that's what they want, or if scale is what they want, or they don't really know what they want. And the first thing I ask people is, what do you want? And
that's
8 out of 10 people can't even answer the question. They're like, well, they can tell you what they don't want. They're really good at that. Well, I don't want to be in debt anymore. Well, I don't want a husband that cheats on me. I don't. No. What do you want? Pull yourself together.
Are soul brother and sister. That is my primary consulting question. What do you want? And you're right. They'll tell you what they don't want, or it'll be something like, I just want people to show up and do their job. Right. Duly noted, not very inspiring.
Right. Well, another thing I see is people, when they're numb and they're stressed and they're overwhelmed and they're a slave to their company and they're working too many hours and everything's a mess and they don't know their numbers, and their wife, they yell at their dog when they go home and their wife's mad at them and everything's just a chaos. What they should do is take that Friday that they definitely could never reschedule because their whole life would explode. They literally need to just delete the whole day and go think and sit in the woods for a day. But instead they say, I just got to work Saturday now. That'll fix it. I'm going to work Sunday now. Now I'm going to work till 8 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. Look, that is confusing raw effort with being productive. Spending 4 hours in silence thinking about what you want and what kind of legacy you want to live, what kind of husband you want to be, and what kind of father you want to be, and what kind of business you want to have is so much more productive than going and turning a wrench or cleaning a house or doing a thing for another 8 hours. Like the lasting impact.
How did you figure that out? Like for me, it was rock bottom. It wasn't the promise of what was at the top of the mountain. It was the pain of the current condition that caused me to just say, I don't know what I'm doing. What was the moment of enlightenment for you? Because I so relate to what you're thinking, and it is not common thought.
People feel guilty.
What is it that got you there?
What got me there was when I earned my bachelor's degree in pain, and then I started working on my master's in suffering. Okay. No, the real world. What got me was my wife going to the grocery store. And she has $200 worth of groceries sitting on the belt with my baby boy, and her debit cards decline. And she has to walk away humiliated in front of strangers. What got me was when that happened to me, and the effort level was there. Like, I felt sick. I felt like a failure. But my effort level was high. I left home at dark. I got home at dark. I was working as the best I could with what I had to work with at the time. But I realized I was doing something wrong. And so then I had this epiphany. Hey, maybe there's people smarter than me in this world. It's possible that people already know the answers to these questions. And that's when I found eMyth. That's when I started taking books more seriously. I think books are one of the most undervalued, taken for granted things on the planet. You go to Barnes & Noble and you see someone's entire life work deducing the solution to a problem after decades of research and pain and suffering. We're like, it's $15. I don't know if I can really, you know what I'm saying? Like, read the book. Like, you don't have to figure it out. The answer's already there. These things, Ellen, they're not opinion. They're truth. It's like gravity. Yeah. It's like gravity. You have to create space or you cannot get clear. It's impossible. It doesn't matter if you think I'm wrong. You're wrong. It's truth. Man, now I'm all fired up.
I love that. And I had a similar situation. Like, so if you're listening and the pain is there, embrace that. It can get better. For me, those super painful moments were always the trigger to something better. Don't think you're a failure because of the pain. That's the good part. That's the part that is letting you know that you could change. Yeah. And it was never the promise for me. It is more now. Now that I've got some confidence in making things happen in my life, I am shifting motivation to those things that I want versus getting out of this quagmire because I've managed to do it. So I think, at some point the motivations shift. For me, there is the promise of the things I haven't done yet, just for the sheer joy of putting something else on top of the mountain, just to see if I can, just for what, as as Jim Rohn says, set audacious goals for what they will make of you in the attempt.
Wow. That is awesome.
Isn't that
I'm a
beautiful?
super big quote junkie, and that is a really good one. And
Jim Rohn is infinitely quotable. And I met him, like I was in a meeting with him with like 12 people, and it was just such an amazing experience. And I don't think philosophically or politically, from a business philosophy standpoint, we were much aligned politically, and in a lot of other ways, we were yards apart. But what's cool about business is business really is a non-denominational language. Until there is an economy in a family, in a society, in a country, there won't be true freedom, which gets me back to my why. As I started to figure out that you could make your own money, you could get out of debt, that you can contribute to your people and your community, that's when I became a missionary about business. Like that's when I thought I need to tell other people that I figured this out and I'm a total bozo. Somebody else can make this easier. Like I was just like passionate about it. So get the money in order, get the vision and the business plan together, and then let's segue into now how do you get the team involved? Because a better way to pay, like people will ask me, well, should I pay hourly or commission? That question makes more sense once you've addressed the overall scorecard for the company and you're getting clear on your mission. It doesn't mean these things can't happen a little bit concurrently, that you're working on your business plan and your financial understanding, as well as addressing how you're paying the guys. I get that. But my caution would be, if you're listening today, please do not leave this session and go tell your guys that you're going to overhaul the way you pay, and it starts tomorrow. Because you're laughing, but do you see how dangerous that could be?
Oh yeah, because I've done that. I've done it because you think of something, you're like, oh, that's brilliant. You spend like 7 minutes vetting your own idea, and then you just roll it out, right? And the emotional roller coaster you create for your staff is just too much for people, man. You got to be clear. You got to simplify. Let's do what you said. Let's segue. I'd love to get some action items, some ideas. Let me ask you some bullet point questions. Like,
okay,
what is one of the biggest mistakes people make in the way that they pay their employees? Is it making it too complicated? Is it paying them too little? Is it not showing them, a roadmap to future earnings later, and or with performance-based triggers and things? What do you see as the biggest mistake little businesses make? All
of those things. And so I think I shared the link with you. I did. Okay. We're going to share a link. I am going to be doing a webinar on this program if you want more. So I'm going to use the bullet points that I'm creating for this webinar to give you some value today as far as how you can do this. You can do it on your own. The webinar may be helpful to you, but like you said, Josh, sometimes the book or the podcast or the TED Talk is all you need. Like, it's okay if you get straightened out with some of the suggestions I'm going to share today. But I do have more if you want it. So Josh, thanks for making that link available.
I'll put the link in the show notes. If you're listening on like your phone, you just scroll through the notes. At the bottom will be a link and click it, and it'll be on the website as well. Okay, keep rolling.
Well, so let's talk about like some things not to do and then what to do. So what do we not want? Well, we don't want brewing resentments. So if somebody makes a side deal, they show up at 5 p.m. on a Friday, I need a raise, I got approached by another company, my wife is pregnant, and they put the screws to you in terms of paying them more, and you do, and then you do something awful like, keep this between us, don't tell anybody else. You are making a criminal of that guy, because someone's going to ask him how much he makes. I've been an employee before I went to work in the family business. I was an employee about 50 times. They all know how much everybody else makes because they ask each other, how much do you make? And they tell each other. So what happens is the next time a guy asks him how much he makes, is he going to lie? So when you do side deals, when you make things that are transparent, might I suggest springboarding from what we don't want to what we do want, to start writing down what you would rather have, and may I suggest that you want to have a fair, transparent way to get paid at your company. That ultimately, and it might not happen right away, it won't happen right away if you made some of the mistakes that I'm going to underline, like the points of pain I'm going to poke at. If you've got some side deals, if there are some weird things in your way to pay, then move in the direction of transparency and fairness. All right. That's why there were unions. I mean, unions were created in part to resolve some of the things that management didn't do on their own. Now, unions may have outlived their usefulness in some places. I'm not saying they're perfect. Ultimately, unions would never be needed if employers and employees were real with each other. Mm-hmm. That's all of that is a response to, right? So if you aim to be fair and ultimately transparent with your team, then the next step I would ask you to do is, like, if you start to realize I got to change the way I pay, then assess the mess. Assess the mess. And assess the mess means to document how you are paying everyone. Let's get clear on it. And you could use your organizational chart. Don't have one? Great tool to trot out to help you figure out what you're currently paying people for what kind of work and what kind of positions. This is where, like, if you put your org chart together, mm-hmm. and then you put Billy's name in and Susie's and Bobby's, and you put how much they pay in the boxes, you'll start to see some of the inequities. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so now we've got Bobby and Susie, and they do the same job, but Susie is pretty low key. She doesn't knock on your door at 5 p.m. on a Friday. So she makes $20 an hour, which is what she's made for the last 8 years. But then Billy or Bobby, whoever I'm talking about, the guy who does the same job that she does, is at 28
because he's a squeaky wheel. He's constantly,
right.
I gotcha. And yeah, the type A dominant personality is going to constantly get more money when really the diligent, quiet, soft-spoken, follows the plan person probably should get the more money, but we don't think about them. We forget about them inadvertently.
So that brings up another philosophy to keep in mind as you overhaul or tweak the way you pay. And I call this, are you rewarding the right stuff or are you rewarding the wrong stuff? So in Susie's case, we're rewarding the wrong stuff. She isn't getting rewarded for being better. She's not getting anything because she's quiet. But we're rewarding the guy who manipulates us, perhaps, on Friday afternoon. And he may not even be manipulating. It's just that you haven't made clear how you do get a raise around here. Mm-hmm. Or, as important, and this is going to create some pause, what's the top of the ladder? It is okay to make that clear, particularly in the office, Josh. Like, if I work for you for 20 years, is this going to be a $175,000 position?
Not if you have a little cleaning business, I can tell you that.
Well, or is the job commensurate with that kind of an income? And we've seen that happen in some positions. That, say, Molly has been here for 25 years. Every year she gets a raise. She's never been caught up on bookkeeping. It's always bigger than her. We keep giving her a raise in the hopes of motivating her to get caught up. Doesn't work.
Oh, what a disaster.
Year goes by, and now we have this disaster. Now, note when you look at this org chart, and you've got names and dollars in, that's what I call assessing the mess. I'm trying to make fun of you. It's okay. Everybody does it. And it can be fixed. And so here are some ideas for fixing it. Start to consider that if you move anybody down the ladder, they're going to leave. They may stay on your payroll, but mentally they might check out. Consider what it's going to be like for, say, Billy, who's making 28, you say, I'm only paying Susie 20. I'm going to correct this. I'm going to move you both to 22, and we're going to call it a day. Not a good idea, because now Billy has to go home and tell his partner, whoever's waiting for him at home, that he got demoted. As important as the guy or gal who works for you understanding the way they get paid and why, and how they get paid, what, why, and how, is the person at home getting it. And so, as you said before, that it's so complicated, it's got to be simple enough that he can communicate it to the person at home. But if he has to go home or she has to go home and say, I got less in pay, that's not going to fly.
Mm-hmm. So, I think we way underestimate the influence of the spouse of our employees on like a major scale. Like that is a major factor in their attitude, their disposition when they come to work. My friend Chris Lamborghini said all of your employees, every human on the planet has 2 personal issues a week. So if you have 100 employees, now you have 200 issues because they all bring those to work, right?
Yeah.
But like that is a mega, mega huge thing. I wanted to ask you a question too, Ellen.
Okay.
You said, what do you reward? What should we reward? I'm assuming, production, sales, efficiency, things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And for some jobs, it's easier. So start with the easy ones. And so if I were to revamp this, and are most of your listeners in the dirty jobs categories?
Yeah, for sure.
Plumbing,
Carpet
heating,
cleaners,
cooling, electrical.
lawn care,
Okay.
yeah, and pressure cleaning companies, window cleaning companies.
Okay, so home service. So this is going to make sense to people who knock on doors. So the people who knock on doors are at some point going to ask Mrs. Fernwicke for sales. Sales are fairly easily trackable. And let's go back to the big picture. If you're keeping score with a balance sheet and a profit and loss, if you put a budget in place, suppose you have a goal for this year of $1 million in sales, and you have 4 guys who work for you. All right, how much goal would I give each guy?
250,000.
Yeah, that's fair. But what we usually do is the guy who's a rock star, we keep raising the bar on him until we ultimately break him.
Right. Yep.
And
that happened to me when I did sales. It drove me crazy. It's like no matter how good you are, that's the new normal, and then you're a disappointment if you go back down to where everybody else is.
And then you have to leave because at some point it's too much.
Yep.
Okay, so instead what we could do is say you have $250,000 in sales. Should you exceed that, there's more to be made. As long as you don't cause me to compromise my integrity. In other words, you'll get fired for not showing up clean, sober, on time, dressed right, and willing to use my checklists. And if you do that, that's the price of admission, and you have to reach a minimum level of sales. What is that minimum? And are you willing to help the people on your team get good enough? What is good enough, and are you willing to help them get it? What's the sales training? What's the operational training, technical training, communication skills? What do they need to get good enough? And the more training you have, the less skill set you need. Now at Zoom Drain, we talked about my history. I left working with, I was fired from my family business. And then I went into doing what you're doing, writing books and I had a little radio show. I started to do speaking. I was then asked to lead the charge at Benjamin Franklin, the punctual plumber. And Josh, just so you know, my big magical story, the most experience I had was as the wife of a plumber in a 4-truck outfit before I was tapped to do that job.
And you were president of Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a humongous company. I'm assuming it was much smaller at that time. And then,
well, it was 0 at the time. And I went from 0 to 47 locations, 40 million in franchisee sales in under 2 years.
Boom.
But what helped were the concepts we're talking about today. I understood money, and I was not going to allow those financials to get fancy. And the second thing was we had a plan. I learned a lot about business planning from Jim Abrams, John Young, and the people over at my investors at Benjamin Franklin and Clockworks. Mm-hmm. Now, I left in 2004. I'm super proud of the legacy. I had a part of that amazing company. But I left and for all kinds of reasons, but the biggest reason was I didn't want to move to Florida. When you are capable of making money, the freedom to go do something else is there. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to stay. Isn't that liberating?
It's completely liberating. Look. The concept that you go to school, you get an A on your paper, you go to college, you get an A on your paper, you get a job with a corporation, you work for 40 years, and they give you a pension until you're dead. That idea is like really new. You know what I'm saying? Like the idea that someone's going to save our day, the idea that someone else is responsible for the groceries in my refrigerator. And I think it's like this underlying normal modern day thing. If you look at all of human history, people had to leave the cave, club something, and drag it home, right? Like if you didn't put seed in the ground, you didn't eat that winter. If you didn't make it happen, and as an entrepreneur, we all know this because if we don't produce results, we're going to fail, and that pressure is oftentimes the reason why we succeed. I mean, when your back's against the wall, you're going to rise to the occasion typically. But that's why I love entrepreneurship. But it also gives you the extreme flexibility, the idea that you can write your own ticket and have location freedom and financial freedom. And I'm so fired up right now.
Well, and I am a liberal too. Like there are times in your life where you're not capable of doing those things, when you're really young and when you're really old, and at other points in between. There is no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no shame in reaching for help when you need help. And there may be times when you're dependent on someone. All of that's true. If that's not you now, then your responsibility is to do those entrepreneurial things. Do you see the difference? Like if you're in a position where
a baby needs to be fed
Right.
by its mother. What I'm talking about is the idea that the universe owes you something, that you deserve to be taken care of. I don't believe that to be true. The universe doesn't owe us anything. It's a blessing that our mother loves us and takes care of us. It's a blessing if there's, Social Security waiting for you. But those aren't things that are just human rights. Those are just parts of the way society, and the mentality I feel that's dangerous is just feeling like if your business is hard, to blame something else or to externalize everything. I did that too. The economy sucks. Or another one people say is, well, in my area, it's different because blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. You're doing it wrong. And that's okay. I did it wrong. Ellen did it wrong. But we want to make it an out there, the world's out to get me thing, when really we can have direct, we are the only thing that can have the direct bottom line impact on our own freedom and success and all the stuff we're talking about.
And if you are in that position, then to embrace it. That is the encouragement I have, because it is so fun if you're a fun person. It is so rewarding if you're into results. It is such a great game, according to another mentor, Jack Stack, and the Great Game of Business. So we want to play a really good game, and then we want to let our team in on it. So as we assess the mess, as we put our org chart together, as we see where our issues are, then what you can do is talk to the team members individually and let them know that you're going to be restructuring. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to do it right away. You're going to take 3 months, perhaps at least, to do this. You talked about making some mistakes. Once I was working with a Benjamin Franklin franchisee. He was paying his people 40% of sales straight out of the top, plus everything else. He was losing so much money. He had 15 guys. I went to his shop and I said,
40% of revenue?
Yeah.
And that's in a plumbing business where the cost of goods sold is super high. So there's nothing left after that.
There's nothing left. And it was a devastating situation. But what I did was, and it still wakes me up at night, what I did was I flew in like, Mrs. Fix-It. I was busy. I said, this is what needs to happen. Let's change it. Let's announce it to the guys tomorrow and then kick it in on Monday. I leave on Sunday. On Monday, 9 of his 15 people quit, and he went out of business. He ended up going out of business. I was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm not saying I was responsible for everything that was already broken at that company, but that still keeps me up at night. Do not do this thoughtlessly. And get your team engaged. Start asking them questions like, do you think it would make sense to make this ultimately transparent so that you knew what it took behaviorally? Right, behaviorally, not he has a good attitude, because I still don't know what that means, but how to get someone from apprentice to junior tech, from junior tech to senior tech. Could you make that clear? Mm-hmm. And could there be pay points associated with it? And then imagine a guy going from one stage to the next and going home with his certificate and pictures of the ceremony, or inviting his partner or spouse to the party that's celebrating the fact that he graduated.
That's huge.
Isn't it?
It's huge.
And so how could that look? And start to talk to your team individually and as a group about the project. Now, you don't have to go transparent yet. In fact, I don't suggest that you do if you've got a mess. They know, but you don't have to advertise it until you start to lay it out. And what if Susie should make as much as Billy, because they both do the same thing? If you move Susie up, that will fly. If you move Billy down, that will not. And if you move people up to gain some fairness, to make it fair, if that's what you end up doing, you can also grandfather them in. In other words, Susie and Billy are now senior techs, but the next guy has got more of a challenge to get there, and Susie and Billy should go back and take that training alongside them. We're going to pay them at senior tech level. But now we're going to develop that path that helps them get there.
Well, and I think it's important to say, because you're right, if you just rip the rug out of someone, even if you're overpaying them, even if they're not the perfect employee, and you're really starting to resent your employee, you're going to turn their whole world upside down. And if you're going to do that, you got to be willing to pay the ultimate price of them not coming back to work. However, if you're really small, wouldn't you think it could be advisable to, do an extreme shakeup, if you're really small and cash is tight and you want to go in a different direction to have these conversations, if you can handle Billy leaving and it's going to be better for your company in the long run, that's a viable option too, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Even though it's painful, of course, and super awkward, it's like removing a tumor or something, right?
Well, yes, and that's where being small is a real advantage. Like if you figure out sooner rather than later, I'm working with a company right now who's overhauling the way they pay, and they have 120 employees. That's a lot of individual conversations. That's a lot of upset. Money is so emotionally connected to people. Mm-hmm. You know, these are emotionally charged conversations. The way daddy taught him about money or mama taught him about money, or like you were saying, you know, when you grow up with certain beliefs about money, it colors everything. So being smaller can help. And ultimately, if you are willing to create a ladder of opportunity and the training that goes with it, you'll never be held hostage to Billy. Mm-hmm. Billy could stay or go, and Billy may stay. Right? If he stays, if you want him to stay, if you want him to go, get him gone. Like, don't try and work him into firing himself by doing something weird with his pay. Mm-hmm. You know, have the conversation and saying, this is the end of the road for us because of these behavioral things. You know, talk to your labor lawyer. I know I can feel a little human resources angel on my shoulder right now saying, no, don't go too far here. But yeah, ultimately not everybody is going to be a good fit, but you get held hostage when you don't have any way to develop people on your team. Now, I have a new company called Zoom Franchise, and we do sewer and drain. I love me a dirty job. Zoom Drain does drain and sewer cleaning and repairs, and everybody at the company knows what everybody else makes.
I love it.
And they know how to move up the ladder. It's documented and it's clear.
Yeah, how can you possibly hurt yourself as a leader of a company by being clear and transparent and vulnerable and real and being decisive and actually having a backbone and making tough decisions, but also setting the vision? I mean, obviously, people are going to rally behind that. Duh. And then the other thing you said is the other thing.
They will ultimately. Don't do it too fast. Like, this is the mother in me just like going, but slow down, right? Because even if you are improving the way they pay, because it's so emotionally charged, take time to over communicate what's going on. Give them an out. Say, if we enroll this new way to pay and it totally doesn't work, or if it's not fair, we're going to reassess in a quarter. Mm-hmm. So write down what you hate about it. Now, like, they're going to find things wrong with it because they're troubleshooters, they're technicians, they're going to find the holes. The more they get involved in it, the more likely they are to buy into it, like your flat rate book, like your manuals, like everything. Right? So if they do have a voice and you hear them, great, but there is no way to pay that is self-managing, that is motivating, that is equally fair to everybody every day. Sometimes I say, well, let's aim for something that's equally unfair to everybody. You know, like, it's just life. Not everything is perfect.
Right.
But we're going to come up with something that's pretty good. But if it is awful, we'll change it. I'm not going to keep doing something that doesn't work. We're going to keep score. We're going to assess. Like in the service, they plan, they execute, and they debrief.
I like how you talked about gamification too. You know, the idea of, you know, because that's a fancy buzzword out there, especially with software. You know, a lot of apps gamify things, and they give you a sticker or a badge if you beat a level in a game. You can do those things in your company, and it's a really cool way to engage people. One of my friend, Kurt Kempton in Arizona, his business wasn't gigantic, but it was good size. He had a 5-star certification program, and they got little badges on their thing, and they got certificates, and he had this whole thing mapped out. It was really, really cool. His company culture was strong because he gamified all kinds of stuff. And Ellen, I could literally talk to you for like 73 hours.
And you know what's interesting? We didn't get into things like, could you pay hourly, commission, salary?
But we're going to do like a lightning round for like 120-second lightning round. Like,
well, let's consider though that it's logical that we would want to start talking about that, but it isn't sensible to do it. Those things could all work. They all have pros and cons. You know, there's advantages. Sometimes we use them cavalier. We use them in a way that's too cavalier, or we're not realizing the other side of that sword. Like a sword is a tool that cuts both ways. These are tools that cut both ways, and there's appropriate things. You know what we could do? We could do a part 2. Let's you and I become BFFs, right? And then come on again. And then we do have, if you are interested, you could check out the program. Now, here's the deal with the program. It starts a week before this is going to air. So we will have already started, but we recorded the first class. If you have the determination to join this class and you want to catch up, the first class will be recorded. And after November 4th, TikTok, the game is locked. You won't be able to join in on that webinar series. We won't be taking people after that because then I'll have to catch them up and it won't work. So
we'll get you some signups for sure. Listen, everybody listening, if you have more questions, which I'm sure you do, we may have even created more questions than we answered, then join Ellen. She's going to be teaching on this in a deeper way with visual aids and stuff on a webinar, which I love webinars. I do webinars too. They're super good ways to learn. You can sit in your underwear and learn all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. And you can live chat.
I'll be in my underwear delivering the webinar. That's another good thing.
Well, hey, there you go. Now you're going to get like a 30% increase and all the weirdos are going to show up. So look, you're right. There is no one size fits all, but you've made some good macro points, some cultural and leadership ideas. And at the end of the day, whether you're paying hourly or commission or a hybrid or whatever, incentive-based stuff, upsells, whatever you're doing, it has to line up with what you said in the beginning, your scorecard, the finances. You have to make your pay submit to your ultimate financial plan so that you're actually profitable as you move in your business. That's kind of my summary, guys.
You are so smart. That was better than I could have said it. Well done. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, because you can get warm, fuzzy feelings to build pay plans all day long, but if you don't understand where the top end of all those line up with your financials, you're going to end up having lots of pain and suffering later.
Right.
But it's been great. It's a pleasure to meet you, honestly. I can be serious when I want to. And seriously, thank you for giving us about an hour of your time here. It's going to be great.
Love to you. And I could talk forever. So thanks for cutting me off. I'm going to jump. I got a call at the top of the hour. I love what you're doing. And thanks for having me. I'm happy to come back on and talk to a smart guy like you.
My pleasure, Ellen. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.